That intro music just doesn't get old. It's rambling about cars, everybody.
That's
Christopher
right.
Smith coming at you across the way, Mr. Chris Bruce. We have some rambling going on today. But first, hey, let's just do a little bit of catch up because we didn't really talk that much last week about just what you and I kind of had going on in our lives. I mean, I talked a little bit about getting the show actually turned over and running. But you know what? I've got so much stuff. I'm driving myself crazy, right? I've got just other car projects I'm working on. I've got Scale Model Rescue, my modeling channel that still hasn't launched because I'm a freaking perfectionist.
That's not true. You have an Instagram. You just haven't done any videos with it.
Right.
My personal opinion, and I've told you this, I think you should just set up a Twitch channel and start recording yourself doing it. And you keep telling me that that's not. Yep, I know. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Well, I caught somebody. There was one of the guys that I follow on Instagram. He just did a live thing on Instagram. And I was like, okay, let's see what this is like. I mean, maybe this is super interesting. And you know what? It really wasn't. I mean, you're literally watching paint dry on some of these. It's like, okay, we're going.
But, fair enough. Yeah. But you've got Scale Model Rescue. Go ahead and tell the folks the Instagram for that.
My Instagram, Scale Model Rescue. It's pretty straightforward. It's at Scale Model Rescue. I'm stuttering a little bit because I thought my microphone went out there for a second, but it looks like it's back on. So, Bruce, you're going to tell me if you can't hear me?
I can definitely hear you.
Okay, very good. Scale Model Rescue. It's very straightforward. I try to post some regular content on there just to give people some teasers of what's going on as far as the projects that I'm working on. I do have my X-Wing finished. I've got the Mustang that I'm trying to rebuild. And I should point out, these aren't necessarily new builds. These are old kits, stuff that I built as a kid, stuff that my dad built many years ago, things that my father-in-law built back in the 1960s. And I'll say it's much, much harder to rebuild this stuff than it is to just build something brand spanking new. I mean, that's a little bit of what I have going on. What about you, Bruce? What do you have going on?
I'm freelancing for several sites right now. I always feel so weird, like promoting myself, but like I will say, so if you're looking on Edmunds.com, you'll see my stuff there. If you look on Haggerty, very occasionally, you'll see my stuff there. There's a site that's going to be launching soon that I can't quite talk about yet, but I've done several stories in preparation for them. So
nice.
That's where you can find my stuff these days. Car wise, it's pretty quiet. The only thing I can say, and this is not an exciting car to drive at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So my mother-in-law is currently on vacation. So she asked me to drive her 2013 Toyota Prius V, just to keep it moving, that type of thing. So I drove that over the weekend. And that car might have the worst transmission I've ever experienced.
That's a CVT, isn't it?
It is. And, I'm used to both the Outback I usually drive and my wife's Outback both have CVTs. But this one, it just refuses to change ratios. So you put your foot down and the revs zing up and then it never
it just stays there.
It just stays there. It's terrible.
I mean, here's the thing though. And this is what's a little off-putting, I think, for CVTs, especially for more enthusiast-minded people. We're used to the ratios, and we kind of like that, the up and down thing. And even just general motorists, that's what they're used to. So when you just hear that steady RPM holding in one spot, it feels like, this transmission is slipping. It's doing something bad. No, you get that feeling in the base of your cockles, right? Is that even a word? In the base of your cockles, where it's like something isn't right here. But in fact, it's better than right, because that CVT is holding your engine in the exact sweet spot where it's continually making the most power. That's optimal.
You're absolutely right. However, this engine, it sounds like it's going to explode at any moment when it revs that high. It seems.
But that's what I'm talking about. It seems like it's going to explode because its peak power is what, probably like 5,500 RPM. So it's just staying right there. It's just staying right there. And from a performance standpoint, who wouldn't want an engine that's always 100% in its peak power band?
Yeah, but it sounds terrible.
But that's the downside. It sounds so weird and so different and so terrible.
It's not that it's weird. It sounds like this little engine's like, please. It sounds like you're abusing it. Is what it sounds like. It's not a great experience in that sense.
Well, I mean, one could argue. I mean, you're holding the engine at higher RPM. I mean, it's designed to safely run up to that speed. It wouldn't go past its rev limiter.
Right.
So it's certainly not as easy as an engine, revving up to that point for maybe just a second and then downshifting, or the transmission upshifts, the RPMs fall. We're used to that cycle. This is just holding it in one spot. Now,
again, like I said, though, I have two Subarus, both of which have CVTs. The older Subaru, the 2012, does a little bit of that, but it still seems like it's smart enough to adjust things. It doesn't just like stay at 1 RPM constantly. And then the newer one, it's basically, it fakes you out that it's shifting. Like it goes up to a certain gear, then comes to like it's almost artificial. I think it is artificial, really.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It's totally artificial. And automakers have done that for the very reasons you just described. It sounds like the engine is going to kill itself. Nobody wanted that experience, even though they're giving up performance.
Sure.
Because that experience just seems too off-putting. So now automakers are programming their engines to reach their peak power curve and then drop out of it for a little while and then go back into it and then drop out of it. And I'm against that. I'm just completely against that. This is new. It's not new technology, but it's different technology. And just because the experience
to Ohio soon, I think you need to experience this thing because it is.
Oh, I've experienced them before. I've driven them before. And I mean, my first thought was, wow, it feels like the transmission is slipping. But then you realize,
no,
there is no transmission. It's just holding the engine right where you want it to be for as long as you need it there. And I mean, and again, too, I grew up riding snowmobiles, and I still ride snowmobiles. I
did too, Smith.
And snowmobiles have the same premise with their belt drive, where you just stab the throttle and the RPMs go up, and they just kind of stay in that sweet spot. There's no shifting gears on that.
Right. But it sounds so much better. Anyway, okay, we have bored the people enough with CVT and Prius talk. Let's talk about something that people will actually enjoy.
Let's talk about a hybrid. Isn't that what we're just talking about?
That's a good. Man, I should use that transition. Okay, you're right. Let's talk about another hybrid.
From one boring hybrid to another boring hybrid, we have.
So finally, the 2025 Porsche 911 GTS T-Hybrid, and also the base Carrera, which we'll talk about as well. The hybrid Porsche 911 has finally debuted after 3 years or so of seeing spy shots of it. It feels like a lot of talk. It's been a long time coming.
There are those who have been dreading its impending arrival. I guess I don't know. Maybe that's something we should get some feedback on. So drop your comments or email us, ramblingaboutcarspodcast@gmail.com. What's your take on a Porsche 911 hybrid? I think it's fantastic. I think Porsche did a very unique build. They went at this slightly different than your traditional performance hybrids. And we should point out, this is a performance hybrid. This isn't about efficiency.
Correct.
It's got a 3.6 liter flat six, so it's not the regular 3 liter.
But it's previously 3 liter, now 3.6.
The engine is new.
The engine is new. They did that by basically increasing the bore is in 97 millimeters, stroke enlarged to 81 millimeters. I'm reading that off the press release, but if anyone cares about that kind of minutia, but the headline figure 532 horsepower total for the entire system. Engine alone makes 478, and then the hybrid system gets you to 532 and 449 pound-feet of torque.
And here's what caught my attention.
Sure.
Aside from 532 horsepower, that's not bad. I mean, technically, this is a Carrera GTS, right? So,
Correct.
That's putting out plenty of power. The motor, it's just an integrated motor between the transmission and the engine.
Well, yes and no, because they also made the turbo electric. Or there's a motor running the turbo now as well.
Yeah, I was about to touch on that too. There's an electric turbo. It's not totally electric. I mean, the exhaust still does its thing.
Oh, right, yeah, of course. But it's the same system we've seen from Mercedes recently on whichever version of the SL that was. It's slipping my mind. But basically, there's an electric motor that at low RPM, it helps spin up the turbo.
It spins it up
theoretically, quick. Meaning that turbo lag is not a thing anymore because
and you ditch the twin turbo setup because the single spins up so quick. But it can also, since it is an electric, little electric motor on there, it can also then recharge the small battery that this hybrid has. And to get back to the impressive thing that stood out to me here, aside from the horsepower, the weight. Of course, hybrids are all just terribly heavy. This one adds 103 pounds, which I think is minimal. It's minimal. It's minimal for a hybrid, and you're getting that extra hybrid performance boost. 0 to 60, 2.9 seconds. Okay, yeah, it's fast. I know there are people that will, and I've already seen comments. I've already seen people on socials just, this is a disgrace. Porsche, the 911 shouldn't be electrified. It shouldn't be hybrid. Hey, shut up. Yeah. It's 0 to 60 in 2.9. It's 103 pounds heavier. Those are very, very negligible gains. It's a performance monster. Unfortunately, it's also a bank account monster because it costs $166,895. To be fair, all of the 2025 911s have taken a pretty hefty year-over-year increase in price, and there have been some minor changes across the line. Porsche was clear to say there's a lot more standard equipment that's baked into a lot of these price increases. And if you know anything about Porsche, when you go on their configurator, everything is an option. Like everything. Here's your base 911. You want blue seat belts instead of gray. $500, please. You want this type of trim instead of this type of trim. That's another $400. You want this system. I mean, everything is an option. Now, a lot of those things are standard. And frankly, we don't, with some of those things, we don't have the time to go through all of them because there are lots. Porsche loves their options. But some of that is factored into the price.
Yes, if you're watching it right now, so this is the refreshed 911. So the thing that's getting all of the buzz and all of the attention, like we were just talking about, is the fact that the GTS is now hybrid powered. The Carrera, the base model, is still around. And both of them now have a fully digital instrument cluster interior. Before there were some screens there, but then the tachometer was still analog. Now it is entirely digital inside. And that's for both the Carrera and the GTS. Porsche also made the Carrera a bit more powerful. Let me get to the specs part because it's like really
it's I think it's like 10 horsepower, but torque I think is the same.
It is 9 horsepower, my friend. 9
oh my god, horsepower. I'm fired.
Yeah.
And we need a new host rambling about cars.
Yeah. It accelerates 1/10 of a second quicker to 62, and it is 1 mile per hour faster at 183 miles per hour. In terms
that's no sale. I just can't go faster than 182.
And they say, so part of the changes are there are new turbos, and that they took the turbos from the old GTS, and now they apply those to the base Carrera. So that's where most of those changes are coming from. Another thing is that, let me again double check that this is just GTS. Yes, so the GTS, for the first time, rear wheel steering is a standard feature on it. So that should help with handling as well. So, 103 pounds extra, but with rear wheel steering, it's probably going to end up being a wash in terms of actually driving the car.
Yeah, I mean the gains are significant here. But it's still, we have a very, very purist segment. 911 people are special, and I mean that in the best way possible. I don't mean it in a negative light. They are special in their passion, in their devotion to the 911. You will find varying levels of purists, and I don't know if there's another car on the market that really says there are varying levels of purists. What do you mean? There are some that believe the only true 911 is an air-cooled 911, which hasn't existed for like 30 years.
Last week, buddy.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's worth repeating, right? There are those who think, obviously, hybrid that will never be a true 911. Just varying levels. And we're at another one here right now. A true 911 shouldn't be maybe turbocharged. I've seen some people say that. Hey, you know what? You just got to have you've just got to have that just naturally aspirated engine there at the back. They're out there.
Yeah,
I promise you, they're out there.
One other thing I wanted to add, and this is really in the weeds, and Smith, I don't know if you caught this, but I think it actually is going to help aid drivability a lot. For the GTS, the air conditioning system is actually powered by the hybrid system. There's no longer a belt running to an air conditioning compressor, and anyone who has driven, even a low powered car, especially, I notice it on my Mini, but any car, when you turn on the air conditioning, it saps a little bit of power because that the belt has to turn, and there's a parasitic loss from running that system. Whereas now on the GTS, at least, you turn on the air conditioning and it's all the electronic system is powering that, so it's not going to put any additional load on the engine. So
I did not catch that. You're an eagle-eyed spotter here. I did not catch that. And you know what? When you have these electrical systems in place, they can take up a lot of the duties that the engine used to perform. I don't understand where a lot of the hate still comes from for hybridization. Yes, it adds some weight, but if you're smart about it, it doesn't have to add a lot of weight, and the benefits can certainly outweigh the effects of a little extra mass, right?
Yep. And here's that electrically assisted turbo we were talking about, where you can see the motor there in the middle. That's going to help that turbo spool up. So even if you're at low revs, it can spin that little snail up faster and, turbo lag no more.
Yeah. I can't wait to drive one. Hopefully I get a chance to. We'll see, because that's going to come out. Is that out later this fall, I believe, Bruce?
I believe it is this fall. Let me check, because I both was looking at the European and the US releases today, and I got them all mixed up. I am not just expected to start this fall.
Yeah.
And then end of 2024 for the Carrera GTS. So the hybrid will be like fourth quarter. The updated Carrera will be this fall.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Can't wait to give it a try. Let's talk really quick, because we're 20 minutes in here. Let's talk really quick about another vehicle. Bruce, I think you have some of the information on this.
I do.
It's the BMW Concept Skytop. Doesn't that sound? That's a great sounding name. The Concept Skytop. I want to envision that as being something just extraordinary, not like an 8 Series with a removable roof.
Which is, I mean, again, we were talking about this before the show, and it's kind of being reductive to call it an 8 Series with a removable roof, but Really, that's what it has a different nose than an 8 Series. You can
Yep.
definitely see that. But this is based on an 8 Series, and it does have a removable roof. Sorry, folks. I'm trying to pull up. I have some additional photos.
I mean,
BMW would
it's.
not let me open them in a separate tab, so I've got to do
I
some
mean,
stuff in the background here.
It's not. It's not bad looking.
No. Absolutely.
I'm
Because the 8 Series is great looking. So
well, but this isn't as good looking as a regular 8 Series with the other changes
Oh.
that are plugged into it.
Yeah.
I think I've just grown really weary of BMW's current design language. I can't wait to see more of the newer Classa, and you get a little bit of that flavor here, but there's still there's still just too much happening up front. There are still too many contrasting angles, too many contrasting lines, too many vents. But you know what? I'm always a sucker for just a nice Targa. I know Targa is technically a Porsche term, but it's become generally regarded as what you call a vehicle that has just a panel that you remove from the roof to give you a full open experience.
Yeah. So this guy, the concept Skytop debuted at the Concorso Elegante Vela d'Este in Lake Como.
Wow, you got some pizza to go with that?
I had pizza tonight for dinner. Yeah. BMW says that it's the next in line in terms of its historic ancestors, I should say, which is specifically what they call it, are the Z8 and BMW 503. And that feels like marketing speak to me. But
it's because it is.
It's an interesting looking vehicle. And we thought, we didn't want to just have one news story today. So engine is the 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 making 617 horsepower. This is the exact same engine from the M8 competition because this is an 8 Series underneath. And apparently, according to some news I saw today, BMW is considering putting this into production. And by putting it into production, I mean, they're apparently considering making between 20 and 50 of them. So if you're a really, really rich person, and you like the idea of this look, then you could have one, but it's not going to be something like that's it's not going to be a mainstream model from anything I've seen.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. That it feels like BMW saying, no, we're not going to build this. But
okay,
if 40 people want to pay a ridiculous amount of money for which we're not going to talk about, we'll see what people are willing to pay. Maybe we'll do it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally.
I don't think the world, and this is just a hot take because it's been a long week already. The world doesn't need another $5 gazillion limited production 20, 30 unit vehicle.
Or if you're from BMW's perspective, it's all 8 Series except for the bodywork. And so doing it is not, most of the development work's done. It's just the tooling for the body panels and stuff like that.
Well, let's develop some vehicles that don't cost $50,000, $60,000. Let's start there. Let's work on the other end of the spectrum.
Deal.
The average age of vehicles in the United States now is at a record high. It's up to like 13 years old.
12.6. I wrote a story about that.
And this whole trend of new cars just going ridiculously high, it's going to break. The bubble's going to pop, and when it does, there's just going to be mayhem and chaos. And
dogs and cats living together.
Mass hysteria. I'm here with a bag of popcorn waiting for it to happen. So the automakers that are focusing on ways to reduce costs and build a good vehicle, instead of trying to find 20, 30 people willing to pay $5 million for one, those will be the ones that come through the other side.
I agree.
Hot take, saying it here right now.
I don't think it's that hot of a take at all. I think you're absolutely right. I do want to point out two things real quick because we're kind of at the midpoint of the show. The topic this week, which I neglected to mention at the beginning, we are going to be talking about the cars from American Graffiti, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. But I do want to promote the show here. And so, again, Linktree, linktr.ee, Rambling About Cars is where you can find us on all of the socials. You can find our YouTube page. You can email us from there. You can Facebook us from there. X us from there. You can tweet at us. That's the better term.
Yeah.
Instagram, Threads, all of that stuff. And then I wanted to call out, because last week we actually did get some comments, and the best way to, help with engagement is to read these comments. And these are from some buddies of ours. Ted Adam Green, who is always a fantastic listener during the previous iteration of Rambling About Cars, replied to this last episode. So I will go ahead and read that now. And for anyone watching, it is also on the screen. So Ted Adam Green says, lots of thoughts, but first, great job. Much like the 4th generation Prelude and the 4th generation Mustang, I felt the 4th generation Supra was too roundy and less defined. Certainly, I love the wedginess of the Mark III most of all of the Super Gens.
Nice.
I also, too, love the Celica All-Track of the same time as the Mark IV, and I felt it had more exterior character and charm. I would also rank the Mark II second, and then they all kind of bleed together for a third for different reasons. Mark I is too early and not as clearly as different from a Celica and seemed like it was only a trim level. He's right, it basically was.
It was.
Mark V is a Z4 coupe, and no joke, I was driving on I-16 just now, east of Macon. Apparently that's where Ted Adam Green lives. Small sports car goes past me, and I think, oh, it's a new Supra. How coincidental. But no, it was a previous gen Z4 coupe. So
I mean, okay, I'm not gonna do the BMW Toyota coach belt thing. That's been done.
Thank you. And so the lauded and legendary Mark IV, it's just too generic and styling for me in the post-wedge era that was shaping up. That said, I love the FD RX-7 as it seems low and wide like a smooth wedge, but wedgy nevertheless. Ever seen a GR86 parked next to an FD? Way more similar in size and shape than I ever thought. Love the 2 Supras you all pulled out for sale too. Thanks for the great ramble and have a great Memorial Day. So thank you, Ted Adam Green. And then
thank you very much. Let me just do a quick shout out, Bruce. This is all in reference to last week's episode where we were just doing a little history of the Toyota Supra, because everybody has an opinion, I think, on the Supra. Of course, the A80 is just a legend in its own time. But as we found out, it's not necessarily our favorite. And I'm glad to see that we aren't the only ones who feel that way.
Also, our buddy Groupa FBC, also a longtime listener. I'm only 1 minute. I'm only 1 minute in, yet I need to make a position clear. The Mark III Supra, yes, the 3, not the Mark IV, is the one I need to have. Edit. And I see we're all in agreement, gents. And Smith, have no fear. I'm also not a fan of the Mark IV styling. It's frumpy and too heavy looking. And Ted Adam Green responded that I'm not even into it yet. And I agree that the Mark III is one of my favorite JDM cars of all time, equal to the first gen NSX. So thanks, guys.
Well, don't spread that love, because that's going to send the values up. I still have aspirations to buy one if I manage to win the lottery, or just pick up a second or a third job to really bring in that income. Right.
That's right. So without further ado, let's move into our topic this week, and that is the cars of American Graffiti. And the reason we're doing this is, what night was it? It was Thursday or Friday night of last week, and I was working on a model, not a model car, a model robot, and I was actually looking for. I was in the mood to watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, and so I searched Tarantino, and none of the streaming services had the one I wanted to watch, but someone did have American Graffiti, and so I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that in a while. Let's watch that. And then I got really sucked into it, and the way the cars are so much a character. The cars are like characters in the movie.
Very much.
Whether they're expressing the feelings of their owners, or whether they're just characters in and of themselves. And so, yeah, we had done 2 episodes about automotive history, first with Rambler, then with Supra, and I thought I wanted to mix it up, and I thought,
do a little bit of pop culture. Graffiti. Yeah, well, I mean, this is. I mean, I think just about every car person, save for maybe the most recent generation of car people, are at least familiar with American Graffiti. Being a late Gen Xer, I mean, it was still a little bit before my time, but through the 80s and the 90s, I watched it. Of course, George Lucas, right? Pre-Star Wars, George Lucas. Mm-hmm. A lot of people may not realize Lucas was and is a big car guy.
Yes.
There's a short film that he did that you can find on YouTube. I believe while he was still in film school.
Yep, it was his USC film school project.
It was a school project, and it's a Lotus, and I can't remember exactly what Lotus. It's just like 10 minutes of this Lotus lapping, I think, Willow Springs.
Pretty sure it's Willow Springs.
And it's just there's no soundtrack other than just the engine. That's just
the car, which is
the car. And I mean, it's a great little thing to watch. If you pull it up on YouTube, it's just worth it for just the sound. It's a great sound. Some artistic camera angles in there. And then here comes American Graffiti. And I mean, he said many times that he grew up sort of in that Southern California culture where people would go out and they were cruising the streets, and he really wanted to capture that in this movie. Of course, it's set in 1962. If I remember correctly, the tagline, "Where were you in 62?" And Ron Howard, Paul Lamatz. I'm trying to think of some of the other people in it. Richard Dreyfuss, Harrison Ford, obviously, pre-Star Wars Harrison Ford. So I mean, some big names in there, but we remember the cars, right? I mean, the performances, the actor performances. You think it's just kind of a silly car movie, and it's really not. It's really a good coming of age story. Mixed in with some cool cars. And we're going to talk about some of those cars here. And if you go to car shows today, here's the legacy of American Graffiti. If you go to any sort of car show, small town America, where it's just like, you know, the local town where 20 or 30 cars show up, or a bigger show, odds are you're going to see a 32 Ford, like the one from American Graffiti, or you're going to see a black 55 Chevy, if not identical, similar. That's how that's the impression that movie made on car people. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the cars. Bruce just killed it with research. I know a lot about American Graffiti, and he sent me over this little doc. It's like, hey, you know, what do you think about this to talk about? And I was like, damn it, man. Where did you get all of this? This is some great information. Especially when we get to the Impala, which we will later, because that's probably my favorite car in the movie that we'll talk about. But let's start here with the 32 Ford, driven by the actor's name, Paul Lamatz, driven by Milner. Milner's 32 Ford.
Yep.
And
you can barely see it. I need to find a better image, but first, like, nerd thing, the license plate. Easter egg. His license plate is THX 1138, which, for any like Star Wars nerd or just George Lucas nerd, his first theatrical film was called THX 1138. And he and Steven Spielberg have kind of made a thing of hiding that in a lot of their movies. I think in every Indiana Jones movie, or at least up until the most recent one, which I haven't seen, but all the other ones, there is some THX 1138 reference in them sometime at some point. And it goes back to this movie as well. And so he's got like kind of the definitive classic hot rod. It's a 32 Ford, 5-window coupe in yellow. Harrison Ford, like, he and Harrison Ford are going back and forth at some time, and he's like, that's like some combination of piss yellow and baby shit green or something. Because they're sniping at each other. They're doing the trash talk. I heard you had a fast car, but that can't be your car, man. That's got to be like your mom's car. Some great lines in that movie. The 32 Ford, I mean, that's probably the car that people think of first, and rightfully so, because Milner, he was the king. He was the fastest guy in the valley. He was the one that everybody was coming after. But there were some overtones early on where, okay, maybe the king's reign might be coming to an end. That sort of foreshadowed what you get towards the end of the movie for different reasons. That maybe we can talk about later. I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to spoil it. I mean, is this movie old enough? To spoil it. I think it's an old enough movie. I mean, it came out in 1972, I think, or I'm sorry, 1973. It's set in 1962, so it's basically 10 years beforehand. I think it's okay to spoil it. at the very end of the movie, he and Harrison Ford have this big drag race, and Harrison Ford wrecks his 55 Chevy.
But he was in front when he wrecked.
Well, so I watched it, and he's not. He's not in the movie, but Milner in the dialogue says he had me.
Yeah, he was beating me,
he was
man.
going to pass me. If you watch the actual movie, he didn't, it's probably just because of the editing or whatever. He doesn't, he's clearly pulling up on him, but he doesn't have him yet. But, Milner's like, he had me. And it's this like passing of the torch, like end of the line type of thing where the writing is on the wall that, this guy's days are through and other people are coming up and are going to end up taking his place. Yep. It's not Harrison Ford this time, but there's going to be another guy that does it. And
then, of course, as the credits are rolling right at the very end, we learn that Milner is killed a year later by a drunk driver.
Correct. Which is also, this is a better shot. You can see the THX 138 license plate there. But yeah, just, that car very much is really a character in the movie because it's him cruising around with Mackenzie Phillips. And you just see so much of it that it's really a star in the movie.
I'm just remembering some of the lines. I can't remember. Were they talking to Falfa, Harrison Ford's character? When they were trash talking and she's like, your car's uglier than I am. That didn't come out right. Oh yeah.
That's
some great lines in the movie.
Yeah. Here we see Mackenzie Phillips is there on the left because she is riding around with her sister and her sister's girlfriends. And they're like, I forget the sister's name, Becky. Becky's sister will ride with you. And he's like, he'll take anything.
Yeah,
he's
sure.
Like, sure. Becky's sister or mother, whatever.
She's like, what, 13 or 14 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Well, let's move on because we've got a lot of cars to go through yet. What's the next one you want to touch on here?
Well, the one that interests me the absolute most because there is the most story behind it, and it's like shrouded in even now like legend and secrecy, and that is Harrison Ford's 55 Chevy. Sorry, I'm pulling up images as I'm talking to you guys. Oh no, did I? Okay, well, here's the version of it from Two Lane Blacktop, and you guys got to give me a second because apparently I did not load that link right.
Well, you go ahead and do your thing there because I have lots that I can say about this car. And you caught something interesting here in the notes. I always thought it was a 55 Chevy 210, but that's some of the mystery,
right?
Because we're talking just like a basic 2-door sedan. A shoebox, if you will, according to some people. But it may have been a 55 Chevy 150. I mean, it's only going to matter to like really specific like car nerds. It doesn't really matter to me that much, but the story itself, is fascinating.
So there is a film that I have mentioned on this podcast before. It's called Two Lane Blacktop. Mm-hmm. It is everyone should see it. If you're a car person, it stars Dennis Wilson and James Taylor, the musicians, and they play these two guys who are just driving around the country, drag racing people. And they have this 55 Chevy that has been modified to hell and back. And it's just an amazing car. So that movie, they made 3 cars for that. They made a car to shoot the inside of because they're in the car. So they're basically in the car the entire movie. So they needed one they could shoot inside of. They had one exterior car. And then they built one stunt car that never got used in the movie because they decided not to do the stunt that was supposed to happen at the end of the movie. So 2 of those cars, the exterior car and the stunt car, got repurposed for American Graffiti. And the thing is, and I did not realize, so the cars themselves were 55 Chevy 210s. And I got to go back. 55, 56, 57 Chevys. They were available as a 150, which was the base model, the 210, which is the middle of the road, and then the Bel Air, which was the top of the line.
Right.
So they started as 210s, but then they were modified to look like 150s. And so which you call this car is very much up for debate. Regardless, so they filmed the movie, so that is what Harrison Ford is driving in that. The stunt car that they made is the one that spins and, crashes at the end of the movie. And then they bought one more just to set on fire, which has nothing to do with America. They just went to a junkyard, apparently, bought a 55 Chevy, set it on fire just for the scene. But it's this interesting car that, kind of are in two really iconic American car movies. The camera car actually survived it, since that was the one that wasn't an American Graffiti. Someone owned that. They sold it for like a bunch of money in the 20 teens. So that car still exists. But yeah, just one of my favorites. And it's also plays such a cool car in the movie because it's the villain's car. Like, you can
it totally is. I mean, it's black. He's driving around with a cowboy hat on. That's
right.
It's almost a cliche. It comes across so clearly as the villain's car.
Is that gonna pull? Yeah. So there we can see young Harrison Ford with a cowboy hat on, with a skull hanging off the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Just like,
I mean, it's over the top. It really is over the top in the way he's kind of presented as the baddie.
Right. But in a way, he still has that swagger he ends up having as Han Solo a few years later. So there's you can imagine this headcanon where that's Han. If Han Solo had a car, this is the car he would have. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know.
Okay.
That's like the ultimate nerd question. Would Han Solo drive this car? I think he would have the Impala.
Okay.
I think he would have something that doesn't look as nasty as it is.
And then
because I mean, you see the Millennium Falcon, right?
Sure.
It doesn't look like a race car ready to tear your head off. It doesn't look like it makes the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, 15 parsecs.
But I mean, it's a flat black, or it's actually like a gloss black, but it depends on what scene you're seeing. There's barely any chrome on it. It's it's made to be a drag racer, and that's what I feel like. If Han Solo had a car, that's what he would drive. But yeah, he's just he is in the movie for a handful of minutes, and yet he has this he's Harrison Ford. He's got this swagger and charisma that you kind of can't look away from him in the movie. So,
well, let's move on. Let's move on to the Impala.
Okie doke. So this is so if you watch the movie, he is titled Ronnie Howard. I think we would all know him much better as Ron Howard.
Yes.
And he has a 58 Chevrolet Impala Sport Coupe that he ends up giving to his buddy Terry the Toad, who we are seeing in this image here.
Although it's like, hey, I want you to take care of my car, and then
Until
towards
Christmas.
the end, and then towards the end of the movie, he's like, "Where's my car?" And he takes it back.
Yes, that's true too.
And poor Toad. But yeah, Ron Howard's in the movie. With Cindy Williams, they're sort of the star-struck kind of couple that are bickering. Yeah. They never get along, but yet they really love each other. And he's going to go away to college. She doesn't want him to go. Mixed in with all of this is this Impala. I've always loved just the custom striping that they did on this. One thing that I didn't realize that you uncovered here in your research, the taillights, those taillight lenses are from a 59 Cadillac. With the little bullet, the little bullets in the fins.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, it's all people note on, and I will take, I'll admit where I got this information from. This comes from the Internet Movie Car Database, so people know about Internet Movie Database. There's also an Internet Movie Car Database that chronicles cars in TV and movies, and so that is where I'm getting this information from. But yeah, this car, they call it subtly customized. So you'll notice there are no door handles. The door handles have been shaved off. Here, let me pull up my notes here and I'll read you the full list. So the hood ornament has been removed. There's no deck lid badging on it. The door handles are shaved off. The Impala badges and crossed flags emblems have been removed. And the stock taillights are switched for 59 Cadillac taillights, and it's riding on chrome wheels with a rake to them. So, and it also has the kind of very the pinstripes and stuff on it, which especially if you're looking here on the roof, that would not have been originally there.
I mean, honestly, the pinstripes and just the set of custom wheels, it gives that car such a really good classic, like late 50s, early 60s look to it. It's always been my favorite in the entire movie. I can't really explain why, other than I love the way it looks.
So I do want to point something out that comes from the movie, and this is something I just learned today. So Terry the Toad is trying to get a hold of Debbie Candy Clark, who we can see here hanging out of the car, and he tells her, yeah, it's got a 327 Chevy in it with 6 Strombergs. Now, this car would not have come with a 327 Chevy at the time, probably would have been in a Corvette or something like that, or maybe some other models, but it definitely would not have come with 6 Stromberg carburetors from the factory. What happened, though, is so Ray Everham, who is very famous in NASCAR circles, he bought the actual car and restored it. And when he restored it, he put a 327 with 6 Strombergs in it. So while it was not there at time of filming, when he bought the car and, had it restored up, he, made it accurate to that statement in the film.
He backed up the Toad.
Right. He backed it. So yeah, it originally probably would have had either a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy, depending on the options. But 327 wouldn't have been. It was a 283 or I forget what the other bigger engine was. But you can see here 6 Stromberg carbs. I've got one other image. Finding these images, by the way, was tough today.
Yeah.
It was not so easy here. Give me just a hot second here. And then here's another image. You can see it with 6 Strombergs on a 327. So such a good looking car with just the way they do the striping. And it's following just the kind of the factory trim there. Just that with the chrome wheels. What a great looking cruiser. You'd get all kinds of attention with that. Yeah. And he he presented this in 2016. I don't know if he still has it or what, but I mean, I don't understand why you would get rid of it if he did. So yeah, just a super cool car. Do you have anything you want to say about that before we move on?
I never, and maybe listeners out there, if you want to chime in and help, I never understood the tuck and roll interior. I don't know what tuck and roll interior even means, but it's got it. Tuck and roll interior. It's a term that is much, much older than I am. And, you know what? And I just do not know. You're going to look it up right now.
I'm going to look it up.
You're going to deny the ramblers the chance to educate us.
Okay. So I don't know why this is so special, I guess, but okay.
Email us, comment. What makes tuck and roll interior so special?
I've got an image right here, and Smith, I know you've seen cars like this. Yeah, that it's that kind of, I don't know how you would ribbed, I guess, kind of
stitched.
Look to it.
It's stitched. I want a better explanation. I want to know why tuck and roll interior is so special, or maybe that was just Toad trying to get Debbie into the car with him, right?
Sure.
Hey, you want to feel it? I mean, the upholstery. I mean, a little double entendre going on in the movie. Hey, it's supposed to be high schoolers. The last day of summer. High schoolers going to high school. I guess
it is supposed to be the last day of summer, isn't it? Because they're going. Kurt and Ron Howard's character are both supposed to be going.
Yep, they're supposed to be leaving for college. So I mean, not like like the last day, like the
right.
the first day of fall, but like the end of summer.
Yeah.
Which is also a little weird because then there was this school dance that they were, or maybe it was just the hop that they were at.
Yeah.
Where, but it had like a school theme to it. Yeah, that's right. It did have a school theme because the principal was like, hey, you're in detention. He's like, I'm not in detention. I'm graduated. But then the next day they're going off to college, and it's Celestia. I don't think the continuity is really that important here. It's about the cars. It's about the whole coming of age thing. And Ron Howard's character Steve, Richard Dreyfuss. What was his character's name?
Kurt.
That's right. They were supposed to be going off to college the next morning.
Back east, which is a term I always love.
Back east.
We're going to college back.
When you're in California, everything's back east, right? So
exactly, yeah. It's so we'll move on. This one will actually be really quick. So this is Lori, who is portrayed by the actress Cindy Williams, who, if anyone's ever watched Laverne and Shirley, that's the only thing I like. Oh, the Laverne and Shirley lady.
Yeah. She's had a few things, but yeah, she was Shirley in Laverne and Shirley.
Yep.
Driving that Edsel.
Yeah, a 1958 Edsel Corsair.
I'm surprised that you even wanted to give that car some time, because we see it just a couple times is all we see it on screen.
She's a major character, and that's why I thought, hey, we'll just do this real quick.
Yeah.
What I did find, though, thanks to our pals at the Ford Heritage Archive, I did find the original brochure, and it's hilarious how they make the car look so much longer than it actually is. Like, you saw that picture just a second ago of the actual car, and then you look at this and it just looks like they stretched it out as far as they could.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a quick one there. But
and then we have Kurt's Citroën 2CV, which also hardly gets any screen time, but it's like, what a curious car to put in a movie like this. I would love to know what George Lucas was thinking.
Well,
because he was casting people, but he was also casting specific cars. I have to believe. I don't think it's just a random selection to drop a 2CV in there.
Right. And here's the thing I did not know until today. This is one of the few big anachronisms in the film, because he is driving a 67 2CV, whereas the film takes place in 62. And I actually had to look into this. So here you can see, this is just what a 67 2CV looks like. I'll pull up a picture of his in a second. But note the big third window along the back here.
Mm-hmm.
I also found here is a 62 2CV. The third window is not there because they did not have that yet. So he is driving, I guess his car is a time traveler, because as you can see, his very definitely has the third window.
Yep.
Despite it not supposed to be there. So curious.
Interesting. Good find. I'm not that well versed in 2CV history, so calling Lucas out, man. You are just nailing it down. How about the 56 Thunderbird? That car, for the limited screen time it had, also earned far more of a reputation versus its total screen time, because we don't see it very much. It just shows up occasionally, driven by Suzanne Summers.
Right. Before she was known at all. This was way before Three's Company or anything at all. But yeah, she drives a white T-Bird. It's a 56.
Yep.
It is a pretty car. Like, it is the definition of just a...
And, of course, Kurt sees her. She allegedly says, "I love you," although you don't really hear her. You just kind of...
Well, no, you see her mouth move, and... Like,
but
who knows if he's misinterpreting her or not?
Exactly. Was that her actually saying it? Was that him imagining it? And of course, then his character arc through the movie is trying to track her down, and in that process, he gets a little entangled with one of the local car clubs that's has some nefarious intentions. I think might be a good way to describe it.
again, thanks to the Ford Heritage Archive, I did pull up a 56 T-Bird brochure, and I thought just super quick, we could just scroll through that and look at the photos. It's only 6 pages, so nothing too big. But this is the cover of the 56 Thunderbird. You've got a nice man in a top hat, I assume some sort of valet or something like that, and a woman looking out of it. The next picture, you've got a woman dressed up with a pink T-Bird and presumably her daughter, or at least a little girl, getting into it. The new Thunderbird for 56.
And if memory serves me correct, that came with a 292 cubic inch V8. I don't think the 312 came out until 57.
What I think is actually interesting from scrolling through this is how much they show either women driving it or about to drive it. So you see like the second image here, clearly a woman's getting in. You see women here. You see a woman opening up the tonneau cover to get in. Like it's interesting how they marketed this car at the time. And that, yeah, you said, let's see, 225 horsepower, Thunderbird Special V8. You can also get it with 215 or 202. So anywhere around in there. And then what engine size you thought it was a 283?
I thought it was a 292 cubic inch.
It is a 312.
Okay, that is the first year for the 312 then. Okay, so 55 had the 292. And then 56, 57 had the 312. Okay.
Yep.
I'm getting schooled on my T-Bird knowledge.
New optional Ford seat belts help hold you and your passengers firmly in the seat in the event of an accident. Belts are securely anchored to the reinforced all-steel floor structure. They're easily adjustable or released with one hand. Lifeguard rear view mirror and new optional Lifeguard sun visors give you extra protection against injury should an accident occur. And I love the photo of a man just punching the dashboard. The new optional Lifeguard padding is available for the instrument panel and sun visors. The special new protective padding material has proved to be 5 times more shock absorbent than foam rubber. So just,
and the marketing machine back then, that's not a rear view mirror. That's the Lifeguard rear view mirror. Exactly. It's like what we're seeing right now with driver assist systems. It's like it's the safety sense active front detection with crash prevention. It's like, okay, that's your automatic emergency braking. No, it's the safety detect.
Exactly.
Anyways.
No, so very good. And you were just talking about the gang that Kurt meets up with. They call themselves the Pharaohs.
The Pharaohs.
They're in a 51 Mercury that is also just awesomely
just like the classic lead sled, man.
Yeah. Here, I'll pull up a photo of it here. Just, no badges, just shaved down, as simple as could be.
Classic lead sled. They take Kurt out. They get him to steal some stuff. They wrap a chain around the axle of a cop car. All the stuff that you did as a kid, right, Bruce?
Yeah, the things I did as a kid, sure.
Yeah, I'm sneaking up underneath a police car and wrapping a chain around the axle and then getting him to chase me so he could rip the axle off.
You only really get to see the car in the dark because it's just so,
well, the entire movie takes place at night, so.
Right. But, with the dark red color, it's hard to really, see the accents of it. I did, again, thanks to Ford Heritage Archive, I pulled up a picture of what a 51 Mercury coupe in sunlight actually looks like. And granted, this one is not modified at all. This is what it looked like.
Yep.
But still a hot car.
Cut the roof, chop the roof, pull some of the chrome off.
Yeah.
Put some big old wheels on it, slam it to the ground. Lead sled, man.
And lastly, and I'm sharing this one more for myself than anything else, is that when we first meet him at the very beginning of the movie, Terry the Toad is riding a Vespa, and as a Vespa owner, I need to call this out. Hilariously, so
I know what you're about to say.
Go ahead. Wrong. This is not. There was no GS 160 in 59. The GS 160 didn't come out until 62, which would still work with this movie. So I don't know what's going on there. I did look up though. There at the very beginning of the movie, you see him rolling up to Mel's Drive-In, and he crashes this Vespa basically immediately. And
Mhm.
apparently, that is a real crash.
That is a real crash. It was accidental, and they
Yes.
left it in the movie because it just totally worked. But yeah, I saw the same thing. I may have got it from some of the DVD commentary because I do have
And
this on
so
DVD and Blu-ray.
I can
And yeah,
totally
totally
understand
real.
what happened, because I have a very similar Vespa to this, and so they're manual, and so the clutch is on your hand, and then you move up and down to choose the gear, and so it's first, neutral, second, third, and what honestly is the only thing that could have happened is he probably thought he was putting it in neutral, actually put it into first, let off the clutch, and away he went. And
Classic movie scene.
I also have to call out Cindy Williams. She has one of my favorite lines where he says, "Oh, I've got a Vespa that I toy around with." And she's like, "Really? Well, that's almost a motorcycle. And I just love motorcycles." Like, I love that she's making fun of him even at like that moment, even when being nice to him. So yeah, that's our examination of the cars and vehicles of American Graffiti, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it is streaming. I believe it's either Netflix or Amazon Prime, so you can.
I think it's Netflix, Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, but it's available to rent or buy.
Yeah. If you've never seen it, it's definitely worth seeing. If
my gosh,
haven't seen it in a while, watch it again. It's a fun
if
movie.
You're a
It's
car
fairly
fan,
short. It's like 95 minutes, I think.
Yeah, if you're a car fan of any era, I mean, I feel like it's required watching. If for no other reason than to kind of get an understanding of what car culture used to be like 50, 60 years ago. And you realize it's not really that much different. People are going out cruising today, getting into street races, just trying to enjoy the car scene.
And there are some great lines that are like really universal. Like, I love when Milner and Mackenzie Phillips are in the car and she's playing with the radio and the Beach Boys come on. And she's like, "Oh, don't you think the Beach Boys are boss?" And his response is, "Music's been downhill since Buddy Holly died." And it's the same sentiment you hear now. It's just replace the bands with different.
Just replace it with somebody newer.
This out with this, and it's exactly the same argument that you hear now.
Just replace it with your favorite artist, and nobody can possibly ever be better than that. Yeah, it's
right. Or
it's
the artist you like
in
as
that
a
respect.
kid. Like, think about when if it's the 90s, it's like, oh, Nirvana is so much better than Twisted Sister. I don't know.
I'm hearing that now. I get that so much now, and it's just like, man, the music hasn't changed. You have.
Exactly.
I'm pulling from the classic Breakfast Club. The kids haven't changed. You have. There's so much great modern music. Yeah, there's so many great modern cars. It's not just about classic cars. There's lots of great modern stuff. But it's a nice little time capsule of a movie. Definitely go watch it. And if you're so inclined, they made a sequel. They called it More American Graffiti. Wasn't really about cars, though. I guess
it wasn't good either.
It wasn't that great. It basically just gives you more story on the main characters, which American Graffiti, before the credits roll, it gives you like a synopsis of what ultimately happened to the main characters. Milner,
and they're all tragic.
Well, no, not all tragic. Milner is killed by a drunk driver in 1963, and More American Graffiti, it actually takes place in different time periods. So you see Milner.
He's a drag racer, right?
He becomes a professional drag racer. And you see Milner basically on the day that he is killed by the drunk driver. So you get to see him on that day. Terry the Toad, he goes to Vietnam and is reported missing in action. But in the sequel, we learn that, yes, he goes to Vietnam, but he's such a clutch screw up that he doesn't get killed. He just ultimately kind of stumbles himself into deserting because he didn't want to be there anyways in the first place. So he just kind of leaves. So his ultimate fate is really unknown. But the sequel leaves him to where, okay, he's not dead, at least not yet.
Well,
and then
let me give you my take after just seeing it. So Milner dying from a drunk driver is like dramatic irony. The guy who is the drag racer and it is racing and has this hot car, he gets killed by no fault of his own. Someone else takes his life. Terry, who is kind of the nerd, like weakling of the movie, he's the one that goes to Vietnam, and at least at the end of, if you've never seen the sequel, it seems from the way you read it, it seems that he's died. Ron Howard's character, who is like, all about like
ambition and getting out and doing stuff,
becomes an insurance salesman. And then so Kurt, which is Richard Dreyfuss's character, this is the one I need someone who is older than me to weigh in on. It says he becomes a writer in Canada, which it's like one sentence, but that to me says that he ran to Canada to get away from the draft and not go to Vietnam.
Could be. I never really considered it that way, but it's certainly a possibility. I always took it as, okay, of everybody on that night, he was the one that followed through on his plan. He went back east, he went to college, and presumably he's doing what he went to college for. Right. Everybody else, none of their plans from that night came to fruition.
Right. Yeah. That's so yeah. So
the Canada thing, that's a really good aspect. I hadn't considered that.
I don't know. I could be. That's just my interpretation, and I don't know if I'm right or not. It's just like, think about all those other characters, like, and the time, it would make sense.
It would,
that he would try to avoid the draft and go to camp. Like, that works for his character.
It does,
but I don't know. But anyway, it's always
American Graffiti. Go watch it. Go enjoy it. And tell us what you think of it. You can email us rambling about cars podcast @gmail.com, or jump into the comments like I know some of you are doing already. And we appreciate it, and help us spread the word. Share our podcast. Tell your friends. Tell your friends to tell their friends. Tell those friends to tell their relatives. Eventually, we're going to get all around the world, but we need your help to do it.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you, everybody. With that, I think we're going to call it a show for tonight, and we will be talking to you soon. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks much. Bye-bye.